Hello everyone, this is B. Harper from Supermaster.com and welcome back to another review. Today I will be looking at Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy 2, The Golden Army from 2008. Chalk this up as yet another fine example about how to do a sequel. This is not to discredit the first movie's value whatsoever, but the way I see it, making a sequel to a well-beloved and highly imaginative film is a very tall order. And what you need to do doesn't necessarily dictate that you must top the first one, but make it different. And that is very much the same thing that Del Toro did for Blade 2. Blade pretty much introduced us to the world, of Stephen Norrington's Blade. And then Del Toro said, well, okay, I obviously can't top the blood rave from the first 15 minutes of the movie, so I'm going to do something completely different. And that is why Blade 2 succeeds, and that is why it is perhaps the best sequel of that franchise. So going into Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, after being exposed to the wonderment of Hellboy, I was more than willing to go on this journey, and I was so happy I did. First and foremost, the first movie has very strong ties to science fiction / steampunk with a little bit of horror. In Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, it is distinctly a dark fantasy. The very same type of dark fantasy / fairy tale that would later come in Pan's Labyrinth. And even at this point, Del Toro has such a wonderful handle of what it is to make these types of worlds and populate them with these types of characters, while still remaining true to not only his first movie, but of course, Mike Mignola's work. What I really love about these two movies is that Del Toro had the decency and the respect to have Mignola with him to inform him of creative decisions so they could collaborate together. And with Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, once again, this team-up pays off in spades. It's not necessarily better than the first movie, well, at least in terms of artistry and whatnot, because basically everybody involved in the first movie is involved in the second movie. But, as I said with the Blade 2 example, it takes what works from the first movie, twists it around, and turns it into something else. It's much like clay. Like, you will make a sculpture or something, or rather Play-Doh, I should say. You have a piece of Play-Doh, you sort of twist it around and tweak it out, and you make a little, dinosaur, maybe. And then you decide, you know what, I don't want a dinosaur, I'm gonna make Godzilla. So you turn little Mr. Apatosaurus or something into Godzilla. You manipulate it, you twist it around, to make it something else. And Hellboy 2, The Golden Army is a beautiful manipulation of not only your senses, but also what it is to be a really engaging and wonderful story. I have a humongous affinity for fairy tales, right? So Hellboy 2, The Golden Army is the type of fairy tale I love. Now, that's not to say I don't appreciate myself, say, Cinderella or something, because, and Grimm's Fairy Tales. Grimm's Fairy Tales, to me, are just bitch, and I highly recommend reading those, but I'm sorry, I'm getting off the point here. So, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army is, of course, a direct sequel of the first movie, and by this point, the characters have evolved dramatically. And I want to take this moment right here to give credit to Selma Blair, who plays Liz Sherman. In the first film, Liz Sherman, while not an unfeeling individual, was still quite distant because she was afraid that her powers would get out of control and she would kill those she loves. However, now that she's allied herself formally with Hellboy as well as Abe Sapien and Professor Bruntenholm, she's finally found her niche. She has found a sense of security within herself, and she is able to have more control over her gifts that she used to see as a curse. And Selma Blair is far more active in this movie, and I just enjoyed watching her, and damn, she looks really good with shorter hair. She really does. But that's not to say everybody else in this movie is a slouch, because they're not. Ron Perlman, once again, is brilliant as Hellboy. He's got the attitude, he's got the swagger and everything, but at the same time, he and Liz find out that Liz is pregnant with his baby. Don't ask me how that happens, but let's just accept it here, because if Black Widow and Hulk can get together, so can a hell demon as well as a pyromancer. Okay? And their relationship in this movie is just so adorable. It almost comes close to becoming overly saccharine, but luckily for this movie and luckily for the characters, it never goes directly into that sort of territory, because if it does, it just becomes completely predictable. Same thing goes with the character of Abe Sapien. Once again, absolutely gorgeous, just I can't say enough about him. And Doug Jones, once again, just delivers a powerful physical performance. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, this time he does the voice. I could be wrong about that. But just the same, Abe Sapien is a wonderful character. And then you have the new addition to this team, Johann Kraus. And Johann Kraus is... he's a very sort of comic relief type of character, but he's not one of those wasted types. He still serves a huge function in this story, and he is pretty damn funny. As for the other side of the line, the villain in this movie is played by Luke Goss, who also played Jared Nomak from Blade 2. So this is Luke Goss's second team-up with Guillermo del Toro. And once again, despite the heavy makeup, despite the decidedly other nature of his character, he still comes across as a fully functional individual. He's deeply troubled, and he's incredibly negative and pessimistic maybe, but at the same time, you can understand why he does these things. So, Prince Nuada, played by Luke Goss, he has a sister named Princess Nuala, played by Anna Walton. And here's the thing about these two. They are yin and yang. Nuala is positive, Nuada is negative. Nuada wants to bring on the end of days by using the Golden Army, and the Golden Army are a biomechanoid sort of military faction. Meanwhile, Nuala, she opposes her brother's notions, but at the same time, he is her brother and she is his sister, alright? And they are basically the last of their kind. And actually, even though it is not explicitly stated in this movie, and it doesn't go out of its way to shove it in your face, there is something going on between these characters, alright? Not full-on Lannister, not full-on Banshee, the television series, by the way, but it's interesting. It's very, very interesting, but at the same time, it's reasonable. As I said, these are the final two of their species. So, of course, what else do they have but each other? And that's what sort of brings me to the themes about this movie. Once again, given that Liz is pregnant with his child, even though Hellboy isn't really ashamed of how he looks, he starts to become worried about the future of his progeny. So, if he found himself tempted by hell because of his demonic nature, what would happen if his child with Liz would be driven to do the same thing? You have a demonic father and you have a pyromancer mother. So what is this child going to be like? Like, what is the certainty of this child's future? And that goes for every single character in this movie. Even though they have their priorities and stuff, they still have that sense of doubt about what's going to become of them in their lives. And one of the best scenes in this movie. This film is just chock-a-block with sheer imagination. It's gorgeous to look at. It is completely functional as well. But one of my favourite scenes in this movie is the conversation that Hellboy has with the Angel of Death. Once again, played by Doug Jones. What does death look like? What does it sound like? What does it want? What is it? It's a certainty in our lives, yes, but if it were to be personified, okay, if it were to have a formal appearance, what would it resemble? And this Angel of Death is one of the most astounding and just awe-inspiring creations in this movie. It has a masculine and a feminine voice. That is to say, like, some points it sounds like a man, and other points it sounds like a woman, but there is no distinct separation between the two. it has a very gracile and almost feminine appearance, but it has a very sort of hulking figure. It looms over people. Just like, you know, the very nature of death itself, it looms over us all, and there is no escaping its inevitable shadow. And it looks horrific, but at the same time, it looks divine. And this sort of quandary, as it were, is just... it is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, really. And that's what Del Toro is really good at doing. Not only is this thanks to him and the very, very talented visual effects artists that worked on this movie, holy crap, but also this is Mike Mignola's work as well. This is a collaborative effort. And, one, you know, going back to the Play-Doh sort of thing, like, you have all these colours and all these shapes you can work with, and at any time you can change it up into something else. Nothing about this movie is stagnant. It is fluent. It is not afraid to sort of break the mould and be unexpected. And, you know what, even though this story can be seen as incredibly basic, you know, bad guy wants to overrun the world with a malevolent sort of army, and you have Hellboy and his crew trying to stop it. Nothing is original these days. But that shouldn't stop the execution from being something new. And in the case of Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, this is more than just a new coat of shiny paint. This is something... there is a sense of proactivity behind it. The first film wasn't content to rest on its own quirky laurels, and neither is Hellboy 2: The Golden Army. Even though it is a sequel to the first movie, it isn't content to sort of retread the very same stuff that was in it. No, it's not afraid to push the envelope and give you more and exciting and brand new things to enjoy. And it is one of those films that you need to watch over and over again. Well, maybe not in a row, but all the more power to you if you can. But the more you watch it, the more times you go over it, the more things you see. And that is what a really great movie does. It enables you to go back and watch it and discover new and exciting possibilities. So, that being said, Hellboy 2: The Golden Army to me is a 4.5 out of 5. As for what I didn't necessarily like about this movie, well, once again, with the first Hellboy, there was nothing I hated about it. I was more than content to go along with it. But if I had to, in terms of deducting that final little piece that would have given this a 5-star rating, it probably would just be the story, in terms of its simplicity and its basic nature. But like I said, it can be as basic as it pleases, as long as it does something new. And that is what this movie does. So I thank you once again, guys, for listening to me ramble. And once again, I will see you in the next video. And it's going to be Pacific Rim. Bye-bye for now.